Okay, isn't national security of importance to us? Isn't that why all of us tend to hand over any personal data that is requested of us because it's for our own safety? Isn't that what governments are telling us?
It's a Pavlovian response. People are led to believe that they should instinctively respond to any call to protect national security. But do governments ever provide evidence? So governments will say, we need an identity card, we need biometrics, we need whatever.
And now DNA.
And DNA, any number of, or of course data retention, as we've been discussing. But does government ever produce the evidence? No, it doesn't. Privacy International produced a report for the House of Lords some years ago now, I think that's, in response to the government's claim that biometrics on identity cards would be an aid to counter-terrorism. And well, what we found was, in fact, the trend was exactly the reverse. That it didn't matter how much countries instituted biometrics, incidents of terrorism would consequentially go up.
Right.
So, okay, you can't prove a negative. They will say, well, perhaps it could have been worse without the biometrics.
Right.
But what we evidenced, our evidence was the precise reverse of what their claims amounted to. So, what I'm saying here, what all of us are saying, is ask for the evidence. You quantify the claims. Don't just respond like a puppy every time you hear the dishes rattle. With national security claims. Just, be inquisitive and be sceptical, because obviously government will do its best to drive up the national security agenda. Post 9/11, even window glass replacement companies were claiming all sorts of benefits to national security for having new windows. Excuse me, where did this come from? Bizarre. It's almost like a catch cry that can be used by everybody for their fun and profit, and that includes governments.
And honestly, we've been close to the policy processes in a number of countries, and the reality is, policymakers just aren't that bright. If it was just so easy to pass a new surveillance law to get rid of terrorism, they would have done so a long time ago. Instead, they've passed many surveillance laws, but we still actually have terrorism, and these laws really haven't helped. And the reality is that the policymakers come up with bright ideas, and they come up with many justifications, but when it comes to actually implementing these policies, it fails time and again. So they might say, we need more CCTV cameras in order to fight terrorism. So they spend millions, if not billions, on CCTV cameras, but then they put them all in the streets, nobody's watching them. And the quality of the images are absolutely useless. So when something does go wrong, you might have one or two good images, but they don't actually help. Communication surveillance, we must make sure we can listen to all communications in the country in case something goes wrong. And when push comes to shove, they don't have that. When you actually get industry to implement these technologies, it doesn't work. And so anybody who just says, it's for national security purposes, we must do this, is probably a very detached and if not silly little politician who doesn't really understand the dynamics.
What about smart cards? Those are now being introduced across the region, this region at least, and we're being told this is for your benefit because all your information can be on one card.
Actually, smart cards aren't inherently bad.
Okay.
If you wanted to create a smart card where all of your personal information was on the card, so that when you went to the health service, you can show your card. When you went to the benefits agency, you could show your card, and that would help your access to services. What is problematic is when, as is often occurring around the world, these smart cards are designed stupidly, where you put the information on the card so that anybody can read it. So when you go to the health agency, they can read your benefits agency records. When you go to the driver's licensing authority, they can read your health records. That's the insane implementation in too many countries. And this is where often we're considered Luddites. You're against technology. We're not against technology. We know that technology can be developed to do this right. Not right just for privacy purposes, but for security purposes, for integrity purposes. It's just that, again, the policymakers and the industry collude, and when they collude, they come up with the dumbest ideas possible and actually put the citizenry at risk. put the government at risk, put the industry at risk. And years later, when everything falls apart, we get to say, "We told you so," which doesn't make us feel that great, because countries have still spent billions of dollars, transformed the relationship between the citizen and the state, and left everything in shambles.
How do you think technology can be used to assure citizens' privacy and at the same time help government and business?
I think it depends, again, referring back to what Gus said, on intelligent design and motive.
So, an example perhaps?
An example might be
Identity.
identity. It could be responsible identity, or it could be irresponsible identity. You're right, there are some identity systems. I mean, even the banking system uses security, for example, across its networks. That's reasonably intelligently designed. Identity systems, if we look at what was going to be the British identity system, it was a bad design. It was a design by committee inspired by one man who had a crazy idea that you could achieve perfection. And that idea of perfection, when you then apply the committee rule across the top of it at the political level, means that everybody wants a piece of that perfection.
Right.
But they're prepared to compromise. Well, how can you compromise on the design for a perfect product? You can't. So facto, you end up with chaos. Some countries, I refer back to the London School of Economics report here 4 years ago, some countries have designed systems which are simple, secure, effective, and have the least effect on privacy invasion. It's like databases, or even passports.
Yeah.
We see countries with radically different approaches to passport information. Some countries centralize that information and want to distribute it all over the world. Others have it split down so it's only on the document itself, and you can do a comparison between, say, the fingerprints and what's on the document. Other countries want to create a central solution where you compare a fingerprint, for example, in real time against a database. Well, clearly that's not going to work.
Right.
So what happens is that everyone says, "Oh, well, it didn't work, but it was a great idea. So what we'll do is we'll just record the fingerprint, and at some later time we'll check it against the central database." Well, you're through immigration at that point. So what was the point of the whole exercise, really? So, again, referring to what Gus said, it comes down to being smart, having reasonable, good ideals, reasonably framed, and consult. Always consult. And the problem, I think, with a lot of government initiatives, particularly, is that their consultation extends to, the big six accounting companies. I mean, Britain, for example, spent £120 million on three consulting companies on the ID card, and in the end, came back down to a system which, to an extent, replicated the London School of Economics report, which cost £3,000. 4 years later, and this comes back to the "I told you so" moment. It's like, let's decentralise the registration process. Let's democratise the registration process so it's in the high street. Let's not go overboard with this. Let's keep the system simple. Where did the £120 million go on the consulting? Well, it couldn't work because you had management by committee with an impossible idea. All the consulting advice in the world simply isn't going to work, because consultants don't operate that way.
Right.
They tell you usually the answers that they think you want to hear, but if you don't know as government, what is the answer apart from this muddy idea of perfection, consultants are just left in the wash. So this is a big, for Pakistan, for example, the biggest risk is when the consulting companies inspire politicians with a crazy idea and then send over their senior partners to inspire them that they can do the job, and suddenly, $100 million later, you discover you're in a worse situation than you were before. And boy, we've seen that in many countries.